Hi, in this workshop we're going to be looking at how we can create some motion graphics or an animation using the video timeline in Photoshop. Now we're going to start off by choosing a document size that's appropriate for this kind of file. Now I'm going to use a web size page. I'm going to use this one, which is Web Most Common. And you can see it's 1366 pixels by 768 pixels. That's 72 pixels per inch. I'm not going to change anything else about this. I'm going to leave the orientation at landscape, and I'm going to leave the background contents as white, and everything else is going to remain the same. So I'm just going to click create. Now I've already set my page up to work with the video timeline, but if you don't have this, so let's imagine you're going to come into this and with an essentials workspace. So your workspace will look like this to begin with. Now I'm not going to change this to motion. You can do. If you go to Window and Workspace, we do have the ability to choose motion, but I actually quite like the panels that we've got over here. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the timeline panel down here. Now when it opens up, this timeline panel comes in really narrow. So what I want to do is I want to make this wider because we're going to end up with quite a lot of stuff in here. So I'm just going to drag this up, and you can see I can drag this up quite a long way without it having any impact on my artboard size. So I can drag it all the way up to there without having any real impact, and it gives me a lot more space for my timeline. Now here you can see it says create video timeline, but if I click on this little drop down, you can see we've got two options. We can create a frame animation, or we can create a video timeline. Now the frame animations are great, and you can do something called tweening using the frame animation, but I think you get a little bit more scope and a little bit more creativity if you use the video timeline. So that's my particular preference. So I'm going to just click where it says create video timeline, and you can see we've got something here that says Artboard 1, and if you have a look over here on your layers panel, you can see everything over here is corresponding over here. If I just flick this out, so you can see it says Artboard 1 and Layer 1, and then we've got Artboard 1 and Layer 1. We've also got the ability to put audio in our animations as well. Now across the top you can see it's measuring in something rather mysterious. It says 05F here, and 10F and 15F. That F is just referring to frames, and you can see here it says 1. Okay, now that means 1 second. So this is currently our number of frames per second is 30. That's going to give us really smooth animation, but it's going to take us a very long time to do. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to change our frame rate. So I'm going to come to this little drop down over here, and I'm going to choose set timeline frame rate, and you can set this at anything you like. You could literally have 1 frame per second if you wanted, but I'm going to set this to about 12 frames per second. And if I click that, the timeline appears to get shorter, but it doesn't. It's still coming out at 5 seconds. So the amount of, or the duration if you like, is exactly the same, but there are fewer frames. You can change how this looks. So we can stretch this all the way out so you can literally see every single frame, 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame, or you can squash it right down to nearly nothing. So that is still 5 seconds of time squashed into just about a millimetre of space there. Or we can go for something in between. So I'm going to go for something like this. So you can see there's 4 frames and 8 frames and then 12 frames, which is the same as 1 second. So I hope that's nice and clear for you. Now I've already made some assets. Now I made my assets in Adobe Illustrator, and the reason I did that is because Illustrator, it uses vectors, we don't have pixels to worry about, and if I bring them into Photoshop as smart objects, I can use them at any size, so it means that I can kind of change my my viewpoint, so I can have close-ups, I can have wide shots, and I can use the same assets. I don't have to keep drawing things, and I don't have to worry about pixels showing up. So that's why I've used Illustrator to make my assets. Now, at the moment I've got layer 1. I'm going to leave this where it is, and I'm not going to change its name just yet, but I will be shortly. First thing I want to do is I want to bring in one of my assets that I've made in Illustrator. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm just going to choose either Place Embedded or Place Linked. Now, deciding what you're going to choose here is entirely up to you. I'll explain the differences. When we place embedded, the asset is actually, as it says, embedded inside your Photoshop document. When you place linked, it's always referring back to the original Adobe Illustrator file or wherever it's come from. Now that's useful if you are trying to get the motion right in your animation, but your assets aren't quite ready. They might not be coloured properly, or you might want to change the colours, or you might want to change some other elements, or the drawing just needs some tweaking, but you just need to get on with it. It's great if you're working as part of a team. So you might want to use Place Linked. Because it means that if you change the asset, it will change throughout the entire animation. If you use Place Embedded and the asset has to be changed, you've literally got to go and remake all that animation again. So you've got to be absolutely sure that your assets are finished. If you're worried about things getting lost or left somewhere, or you might not be able to find them again, Place Embedded is useful, but Place Linked is great if you aren't quite ready yet. If you need to change something, or the logo has updated, or you think the logo might change, or you think the colour of something might need to be altered. I'm going to use Place Embedded just for ease, really. I'm going to start off with this one that I've made. It's called House, and I'm going to place this. Now I already knew that I was going to use this file size, so I've made my assets to fit. Okay, but because they're vector based, I can still scale them up and do whatever I like with them. So I could make this a little bit bigger if I wanted to. I am going to just make it a tiny bit bigger, I think, just to make sure I haven't got any black lines along this bottom edge here. So I'm quite happy with that. Once I'm happy with the position and size of my asset, I just click the tick and it drops it. It's brought it in as a smart object. And you'll notice that it's put it down on top of layer 1, and that corresponds over here on my layers panel. And you can see it's got this little icon here which shows that this is a smart object. So I can't directly edit this asset in Photoshop. I would have to go back to Illustrator to do any editing. Okay, so there's my my first element. My first asset is placed in my animation. This layer here is going to become part of my sky. So I'm going to call this Night Sky. And there's nothing on here at the minute. So I'm going to make sure I've got it selected. And then I'm going to choose my gradient tool. Now, if you can't see your gradient tool, find the paint bucket tool and you'll find that they live in the same place. So I'm going to use the gradient tool. And I'm going to choose a blue gradient. So I've got all these folders with ready-made gradients in. So I'm just going to spin open the blues folder. And I'm going to come down here to something that looks like a night sky. I think this one here where it says blue 30, that should do me. It's kind of going from a very dark navy to this kind of dusky blue here. Now I'm going to draw in a nice straight line, and I'm going to achieve that by holding down my shift key as I draw out this line like this. And you'll see however long I create this line changes the gradient. So wherever I start it will also change how this gradient looks. So you can have a little play around with this. If I drag bottom to top, we reverse the gradient. That's wrong, okay? I need it lighter near the horizon because that's how it is. Okay, so something along those lines to give me a kind of nice night sky, maybe a little bit darker. There we are. So now you can see my night sky and my house. Whilst it looks like a complete picture, it is just layered up, okay, just like a normal Photoshop document, but we have this timeline. And now what I'm going to do is I need to add maybe a moon to make it look like it is night. So I've got another asset, so I'm going to choose File, and again I'm going to go Place Embedded and find my moon asset. I'm going to choose Place, and once again this is going to come in as a smart object. So I'm going to put the moon in the night sky wherever I want it, so you could have it quite low or you could have it high up, very high in this corner, wherever you want it really. So I'm going to position it here. It has this bounding box on it because it's a smart object and I haven't dropped it, so I'm just going to click the tick. Okay, so there's my moon, and you can see that the moon is sat on top of the house layer. Now this is great because I need to make the sky look or make it look more nighttimey, and the way I need to do that is to darken the house down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the house layer and I'm going to add a new layer. Now whichever layer I've got selected, it will always add a layer in above, just one above the selected layer. So if I add a new layer, it will add a layer above house but below moon. So I'm going to click down here, and there you go, it says layer 1, and you can see it corresponds over here on my timeline. I'm going to call this layer darkness, and you'll see why in a second. Darkness. And I'm going to fill this layer using the paint bucket tool this time, which lives with gradient, and I'm going to fill it with black. You can see I've got black in my foreground colour here, and I'm just going to fill with black. Now you can see because the moon layer is on top, we can still see the moon but we can't see the house. Now that's a little bit brutal, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce the opacity of this particular layer from 100% down to about, I don't know, 70%, something like that. So it's entirely up to you. You might want to go a little bit lighter. That's too light. I think about 70% should do it. Oh, I've made mine 71. Okay, so now we've got our moon shining brightly in the sky and our house in relative darkness. So at the moment you can see I've got 5 seconds on my timeline and nothing so far moves. Okay, the whole thing just stays exactly the same from start to finish. So what I'm going to do is at some point I want the night sky to fade away and for a kind of sunset sky, a sunrise sky to appear. So I think I'm going to have absolute darkness for maybe 2 seconds, so nothing is going to change up to this point. Okay, so the moon's just going to sit there, the sky's going to stay dark, the house is going to stay in darkness, but at the 2 second point I want my moon to start to set. So in order to make the moon move, we need to split it. So at the playhead here, I'm going to just select this moon layer, and I'm going to click on the scissors. Now this will split at playhead, you can see it says there. So I'm going to just click here, and you can see that it has indeed split my moon, and I've now got two layers. So you can see I've got moon and moon copy, moon and moon copy. You can see moon copy is above moon, which is exactly as it appears here. But I don't want that. I want these elements to be on the same part of my timeline. So I'm going to just drag this down, and you can see it's now put them both on the same part of the timeline, and it's added them into this video group. It's called Video Group 1. Now that's not a very memorable name, so I'm just going to rename this. So I'm just going to double click. I'm going to call this Moon folder, or Moon folder 1. Now the reason I'm going to call it Moon folder 1 is we're going to end up with another moon folder in a little while. You'll see why as we go along. So I've split this, and I want to move this layer now. So I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to pick up the moon, and I'm going to move it down a little. Okay, and I then need to roll this forward. So I'm just going to use my cursor keys just to push that forward one frame, and again I'm going to split it, and I'm going to just select this element and pick it up and move it, and again move it forward. Now I always select this piece, so it's this bit stays as it is. So if we just have a little look and see how that is, you can see that that is moving down nicely. Oops, I didn't move this one. I do find while I'm talking I struggle to remember what it is I've done, so I'm going to just move this one down. There we are. And then push that forward. Now at this point I'm going to start fading my moon as well. So I'm just going to let's see what this looks like. I've forgotten what I've moved. Right, so this hasn't moved. So that's moved. This, there we are. So I'll move this, and I'm going to move this, and I'm going to fade it as well. So I'm going to fade this down to about 75%, and then move and slice. So move and fade to about 50%, somewhere around there. Now I'm almost at the horizon here. Now my problem is if I carry on moving the moon down, because it's on top of the house, it's going to come down in front of the grass here, and I don't want that to happen. I need it to be behind the house. So what I'm going to do with the remainder of this this piece of moon is I'm going to move it so it sits below the house. Now you can see this is moon copy 13, so I'm just going to pick this up and I'm going to drag it down here like this. So now you can see it's positioned down here, and I'm going to just push that forward and slice it. So this is going to move, and this time oops-a-daisy, it's not below the house, so I just need to move that down. Again, it's not the end of the world. So there we go. And then I push that back up so it's sitting on the same layer. There we are. So now you can see when I move this, and I can pick this up, and you can see it's dropping down now behind this horizon. And again, I just need to fade this out. Not quite sure why it won't let me. Oh, it's because I haven't got my playhead in front of it. There we are. So now I can fade this down a bit more. And fade a little more. And move like so. And then I think that will be it. So down comes the moon, and it fades as it goes below the horizon, like so. And as that happens, I want the darkness that we've got going on here to kind of just fade away. And to do that, to achieve that, I need to select this darkness layer, and I'm going to use a transition. I'm going to use the fade transition just to have that fade out over time. So as the moon dips down like that, the darkness is fading away, but the sky is staying the same. So I need at some point for this night sky to fade out. So I'm just going to bring this back to here, and I'm going to add a new layer. Now I need the new layer to be just above night sky, so I've got my night sky layer selected, and I'm just going to click new layer, and I'm going to call this one sunrise. And I want this layer to be on the same part of the timeline as my night sky. So you can see it's now added a new video group. So I'm going to call this sky group, like that. I'm going to call this group here, this is my second moon group, so I'm going to call it moon group 2. So that's the bit that goes behind the horizon. So I've got my sunrise selected. Now I need to make sure that my playhead is somewhere over this section so I can see the sunrise. And I'm going to use a different gradient this time. So I'm going to go back to my gradient tool, and rather than pick a blue gradient, I'm going to go for either a pink or an orange. I think I'll go with orange. Oops. So spin those open, and I'll need to look for something that looks like a sunset. That orange 05 looks nice and bright, but I think it might be a bit too much. Maybe orange 09. Let's see if there's anything else, or orange 13 even. I think orange 09. There we are. Now I need the orange part to be down here near the horizon, because that's where the sun is, and it kind of fades up into pink. So let's see how that looks now. You can see that that is upside down. That's because I dragged top to bottom. But if I go bottom to top, we can change how that looks. So let's see how this looks. Yeah, I think maybe something like that will look okay. Now at the moment, that's a pretty harsh switch between the dark night sky and the sunrise, and that's not how sunrises happen. So we need to put a gradient in there. So let's see if we've got a little crossfade that will work for us. So let's see how this works, and you can see that works quite nicely. So let's see what this looks like so far for time. Down goes there we are. So I'm just going to extend my house animation out, and we'll have the sunrise up to about the 5-second mark, I think. Could extend that a little way. And I think maybe I'm just going to extend, so I'm going to push the sunset over here a little. I'm just going to slow things down a little bit. So let's see how this looks. Okay, I need that transition back in. So I'm going back with my crossfade. There we are. So that's more like it. So around this point here, where the darkness has faded and my sunrise is looking pretty impressive, I want my sun to start to come up. So I'm just going to fold up the sky group for a second. I want and I can fold the moon up as well. There we are. I can fold all these up, makes it a lot tidier because I'm not using these at the moment. So I want my sun to come up below the house and above the moon. So I'm going to select the moon group, and I'm going to go to File and Place Embedded and find my sun. Again, little asset that I've made in Illustrator, and you can see that it is behind the house. Okay, it looks cute. And I'm just going to have that peaking above the horizon there. And when I'm happy with that, I can click the tick. Okay, so 1 minute it's not there, and then it is. Okay, so if I again need to push that up so it becomes a group. So this is going to be called the sun group, or sun group, like so. And so now we can move this little asset up a tiny bit. I can have this kind of rise as slowly as I like. Now the thing about animation is you can make anything happen, so the sun doesn't have to go straight up if you don't want to. You can have it meandering all over the sky. I think I'll just do one more. There we are. So let's have a little look, see how my sun looks. Here he comes. There we go. And then I think once the sun is in the sky, I might have him spin round. So I might animate that further in a moment or two, but we'll just concentrate on getting the sky looking right now, because as the sky, as the sun moves up through the sky, it's going to lose this kind of orange and pink glow, and it's going to become our daytime sky. Now I have to decide at what point is that going to start to happen, and I think probably around here. So I'm going to position my cursor at this point, and I've selected the sunrise layer, and I'm just going to split that, and I'm going to remove my sunrise, and I'm going to add a new layer, and again I want it to be in my sky group, so I've chosen the sunrise layer and I'm adding a new layer, and I'm going to call this day sky, like so. And I'm going to add a new gradient, and this time I'm going back to the blues. Let's just fold these up, go back to blues, and I want this nice kind of daytime. I'm going to go with this blue 02, and I need to make sure my playhead is on day sky, and then I can add my gradient. Let's make sure it moves the right way, and you can have the gradient rolling like that. And again, I've got this harsh switch, so I'm going to put a crossfade in there. That might all happen a little bit suddenly. Yeah, it's not sunsetty enough for long enough, so I'm just going to move this up. Okay, and let's try that instead. That should be better. Da, 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 da. There we are. So that's where it starts to change, and then it rides up the sky, and then it's completely blue. So let's have a look and see how this looks from the beginning. Down goes my moon, and up comes the sun. Okay, now you can see I've got this raggedy nonsense at the end here. We'll worry about that in a moment. Okay, so there's my my sun coming up. Now at the point where my sun starts to rise, I'm going to imagine that whoever lives in this little house has just lit the fire, and there's going to be some smoke coming out of the chimney. So I need that to be behind the house, because it's behind. It's going to appear behind the chimney on the house. So I'm just going to fold all these down. But it would be in front of the sun. So I'm going to select the sun group, and I'm going to add a new asset. So place embedded again, and this time it's going to be this one, little cloud 1. I'm going to place that on my page, and it's going to, I'm going to shrink it down, so it's going to start tiny little bit of smoke just appearing out of the chimney. Just nudging that down. I'm using the cursor keys to nudge that into position because I can be a bit more precise with it. And I click the tick when I'm happy with its location. So that's how it's going to start. So I'm going to nudge forward and crop it, clip it, push those back so they're on the same part of the timeline again. So I've made another video group, so I'm going to call this one Smoke Group. There we go. And then I'm going to click this, and I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, and click the tick, because I'm changing the asset all the time, so because it's a smart object I have to go through that clicking of the tick over and over. So I'm not going to move it this time, I'm just going to nudge that forward. This time I'm going to move it slightly, so I can move it without having to click the tick, but the minute I scale it, I have to. There we are. So I'm just moving forward again and move it, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, forgot to click the tick. There we are. Crop that. And again, move it. Make it a bit bigger. So you just have to be mindful about what you're doing and the order that you're doing it in. So a bit bigger. And the next one, I'm going to not just move it, I'm going to scale it up, move it, and I'm going to change the opacity. So I'm just going to fade this slightly. Oops. There we go. Cut this. So once again, we're moving, scaling, and fading. Click. So move, scale, fade, click, move, scale, fade, and click, cut. And I think that'll be the last one, because the next one it would kind of just fade away to nothing. So click the tick on that and just chop that there. So that's going to be the last one. So I can get rid of that now. So as my smoke comes out the chimney, it looks like this, and it fades away to nothing. But I want that to kind of repeat. So I'm going to select all these bits of the cloud. You can see they're all selected here, and then I can duplicate those layers and duplicate again, and duplicate again. So that just kind of keeps puffing away. So let's see what that bit looks like. Okay, so the house has disappeared, but the smoke keeps coming. So let's just find the house. So you can see this is the house layer. So I just need to extend that and extend the sky. So going from this to this, let's duplicate that again. And then we'll take this back to that point. There we go. So that's kind of all going to the same conclusion there. Okay, and I said I wanted to do a little bit more animation with the sun, so I'm going to just cut this. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So make sure you've got the right layer selected. Cut that, and I'm going to spin the sun. A little bit. And again, so again, I don't have to do this a million times. I can just do this a few times and then copy. So I'll do it one more time and then I'll just copy those like so. So that'll do me. So when do I start moving? So it's from here. So these few I select and I can duplicate those layers. And again. And again. And again. And again. So a lot of this, things that just keep moving, we don't have to keep chopping, and we can just do it a few times and then copy and duplicate. So that's our little animation. Now I'm going to finish this off with a sound file. So as the dawn breaks, so at this point here, I'm going to add a sound file. So I just need to find the audio track, and I'm just going to go to here and add audio, and it's this one here. It's called Cock-a-doodle-doo. And it's adding that clip now, and I just need to make sure it goes where I want it to. So that's a bit previous. Okay, so I think that's just about it. Now what we need to do is we need to save our work. It's really important that you save it. And these just save as ordinary Photoshop documents, even though they're far from ordinary Photoshop documents. I'm just going to close all my, my layer groups up so it looks tidy. So when they're all closed, you can see it doesn't look too outrageous. So we've just got our moon folder, our darkness, the house, the smoke, the sun, our second moon group and the sky group. And we've got our timeline. And I'm just going to go to File and choose Save. And I don't want to save it to Creative Cloud. Now, I could save it to the Creative Cloud, but I'm going to save on the computer simply and solely because if I'd used any linked documents, just at the moment, Photoshop does not support linked documents when you save to the cloud. So with that in mind, I'm just saving on my, my computer. So I'm going to call this House Animation. And you can see down here that it's a Photoshop format, so I'm just going to save that. But that's not how we see our video. What we need to do now is we need to go to File and choose Export. And you can see at the bottom here it says Render Video. And I'm just going to render this out. And you can see it's going to save it as an MP4 file. I'm going to save it on my desktop. And I'm saving it in this H.264 format, which is nice high quality video format. And you can click render,